was 13 driving a car that wasn't mine to a house with no back door, taking care of people who were supposed to be taking care of me. There was no carefree Roxanne era that I'm trying to get back to. There was no gap year, no finding myself in Tuscany. So if reclaim your life has always felt a little bit like instructions written for someone else, hi, pull up a chair. This part is for us. Hey there. Welcome back to Mama. Sit down. The podcast where moms of adult children reclaim their lives one boundary at a time. Now, I want to ask you something today, and I want you to really sit with it. Who were you before you became mom? Go ahead, take a second. If you just stared blankly at the ceiling or maybe laughed a little uncomfortably, you are in the right place. Because here's what most people won't say out loud. For some of us, there is no answer to that question. Not because we lost ourselves in motherhood, but because we were already somebody else's lifeline before we ever held our first baby. We went from surviving childhood to raising children without a single stop in between to just be. And that changes everything about how we understand identity, rest, and what it actually means to reclaim our lives. Today, we're starting a brand new series. It's called She's Not Lost, She's New. And part one is this: there was no before, and that's okay. Let's go. Here's a little something about me I don't think I've ever said quite so plainly. I've been taking care of people my entire life, and I do mean entire. My daddy left when I was 4 years old. My mom had a breakdown not long after. There wasn't much help available for someone struggling with mental health in the 1960s, or as my grandkids like to call it, the 1900s, which is fair. One thing I would like to say right here, though, is that I have zero bitterness or unforgiveness for my parents. They loved me, and I know that. They were also dealing with traumas from their own childhood. I say that because I don't ever want reflection to be thought of as a place to lay blame. It's just a way to find where a behavior began so that it can be changed. For me, by the time I was 13, I was driving a car. By 15, I was married, and 11 months after that, I gave birth to my first daughter. She was perfect, and I was determined to be the perfect mom. I remember being a 16-year-old dancing around the living room with my baby to that Stevie Wonder hit, For Once in My Life. If you know that song, you know the second verse. It says, "For once in my life, I won't let sorrow hurt me, not like it's hurt me before. For once, I have something I know won't desert me. I'm not alone anymore." And right there, holding that baby, I made it my life's mission to make everything perfect for the ones I love. What a completely reasonable and totally achievable goal, right? But here's what I didn't understand then. I was already a caretaker when I made that declaration. I didn't start taking care of people when my daughter was born. I'd been doing it my whole life. Survival had already taught me that if I didn't handle things, nobody would. Love, in my experience, looked like stepping up, fixing it, holding it all together. So when people say, go back to who you were before kids, I genuinely don't have an answer for that. And for a long time, I thought something was wrong with me because of it. But now I know the truth. There was no before. And that is not a tragedy. That is actually the beginning of something extraordinary. I say this with full awareness of the irony here. This podcast opens every single week with reclaiming your life, one boundary at a time. Reclaim your life. Y'all, I wrote that. I said it with my whole chest. And then one day I sat down and thought, reclaim what exactly? What are we reclaiming? Because some of us never had an unclaimed version to begin with. We came out of the womb already scheduled. I was 13 driving a car that wasn't mine to a house with no back door, taking care of people who were supposed to be taking care of me. There was no carefree Roxanne era that I'm trying to get back to. There was no gap year, no finding myself in Tuscany. So if reclaim your life has always felt a little bit like instructions written for someone else, hi, pull up a chair. This part is for us. Most podcasts, most books, most well meaning friends will tell you, get back to yourself, girl. Remember who you were before the kids came along. And if that lands for you, wonderful. Run with it. But some of us, we hear that and we feel a quiet panic because there's nothing to get back to. I grew up in an environment where peace was not predictable, safety was not guaranteed. I learned early on that my job was to hold things together. Not because someone set me down and assigned me that role, but because children who grow up in instability learn to survive. They learn to read the room. They learn to anticipate needs. They learn that being needed is the closest thing to being safe. So when I had my own family, I did what felt natural. I fixed, I provided, I managed. I was going to create the family I never had. A family where nobody worried about coming home from school to no lights or an empty fridge. And I did that. I genuinely did. But somewhere along the way, that deep desire to protect became something heavier. I wasn't just building a healthy home anymore. I was carrying it on my back. And here's what nobody tells the woman who was already a caretaker before she became a mom. You don't know where the role ends and you begin because it was never separate. You never had the chance to build yourself first, independent of what you could do for other people. So if I asked you right now, who are you outside of being a mom? And you went quiet, I want you to know that silence is not a sign of failure. That silence is actually the very first honest thing you've said about yourself in a long time. Told you in an earlier episode about the night I ran away. I was 60 years old, not 6, 60. No suitcase, no plan, not even a toothbrush. I grabbed my keys and I left. My family thought I had lost my mind. They were calling each other, preparing an intervention. I've said this before, but you would have thought I'd joined a cult. But here's what I've never said so directly before. I didn't run away looking for who I used to be. There was no used to be. I ran away because for the very first time in my 60 years, something in me just needed to stop producing, to stop managing, to stop performing the role that had been mine since I was old enough to hold a role. I sat in that hotel room and I did not know who I was without all of it. And that was terrifying. And also, for the very first time, it felt like possibility. My family thought I was losing my mind. The truth is, I was actually finding myself, maybe for the first time ever. Here is the belief I need you to release today. The belief that if there was no before, there is nothing to find. That is simply not true. You're not trying to recover something, you're discovering something. And that is actually a gift, even if it doesn't feel like one right now. Think about it this way. Most women who are trying to get back to themselves are working with an old blueprint. They're trying to rebuild a version of who they were at 22, before the kids, before the years of fixing and carrying. And that blueprint is often just as incomplete as it ever was. But you get to build from scratch. You get to ask for the very first time, what do I actually like? Not what am I good at? Not what does everyone need from me? What do I, in my own heart, find joy in? That is not a small thing. That's everything. Psalm 139:14 says, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God didn't make you a function. He made you a person. And that person has been underneath all the caretaking this whole time, waiting for someone to finally ask her how she's doing. So let's get real and practical, Mama, because that's what we do here. Step 1, bring God into the discovery, not just the management. We're used to praying about our kids, our situations, our problems, but try praying this. Lord, show me who you made me to be, not just what you made me to do. Because He created you before you were anybody's mama, before you were anybody's fixer. He knew exactly who you were when you were still being formed, and He has not forgotten. Step 2, stop saying, I don't know who I am outside of being a mom, like it's a shameful confession. Say it like it's an adventure, because it is. You are not broken. You are beginning. Step 3, try something with absolutely no purpose attached. Not a class that will make you more productive, not a hobby that could turn into a side business, something that just feels good with zero return on investment. If it's sitting in your car, eating French fries and listening to 80s music, that counts. I mean, that counts as healing, and I will stand by that. Step 4, ask yourself one question this week. Not what should I be doing, but what have I always been curious about? Not a goal, not a calling, just a curiosity. And start there. Mama, if you have spent your whole life taking care of people and you heard the words, go back to who you were and felt nothing but emptiness, I want you to hear this. That emptiness is not the end of the answer. It is the beginning of the question. You are not lost. You are not behind. You are not missing something everyone else has. You are simply new, and new is not lesser. New is actually full of potential. So this week, I want you to sit with this. Let the question live in you, not frantically, not like a 5-year plan attached. Just let yourself begin to wonder, who is she when nobody needs anything from her? That woman is in there. She has always been in there. And it is absolutely her time now. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. If this episode resonated with you, if you are the woman who has been everything for everyone and genuinely does not know where to start finding herself, share this with another mama who needs to hear it. Because I promise you, she is out there, probably right now, doing something for someone else and ignoring her own heart. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a review if you've got a minute. It helps more women find their way to this chair. And next week, we're going to go even deeper. Part 2 of the She's Not Lost, She's New is called Meeting Yourself at Your Age. Because discovery does not have an expiration date. And we're going to talk about what it actually looks like to start figuring out who you are, maybe for the very first time. I think you're going to love it. Until then, breathe, rest, and remember, it's your time now.